This is one of the most famous walls in the world, over 700 kilometers long, 8 meters high, with various graffiti.
This is the graffiti. The right one with kuppah, or for Jewish people. The left one with a scarf, it's a Palestinian. Both of them, they need destroyed the wall.
For decades, the wall zigzags across the land of the West Bank, splitting Palestinian Muslims and Christians from residents of Israel on the other side.
If you have a neighborhood, the elevated snakes, what do you do? You make a fence.
We are not animals. No, we have mind, we can thinking.
We get tired in this open-air prison, but there is no solution.
It's not about giving the Palestinians the authority of the West Bank. From what we see, even before October 7th, they kind of like don't want us here.
This structure behind me has different names depending on who you talk to. Israel calls it a security fence as it claims that this stops terrorists from Palestine. Or for Palestinians, they say this is a separation wall, a barrier to peace and a wall of racial segregation. So what is life like along the wall for Palestinians, and can this barrier bring long-term stability and safety to Israelis? In June 2002, Israel started to build this barrier. It claims the purpose was to prevent terrorists from infiltrating Israel. That was during the height of the Second Palestinian Intifada, or uprising. Israel was suffering a number of suicide bombings and other attacks from Palestinian groups at the time. The death list happened on March 27, 2002, in a hotel about 40 minutes drive from Tel Aviv.
It was a Passover evening. Many persons was here, 300 persons, a dinner for 300 persons, or 350 persons. And everybody come and they sit everywhere. And the terrorist come inside and explode himself very close here in the area of the dancing area, what we call it in this banqueting hall. The 30 persons has been killed, including my brother-in-law.
Hamas later claimed responsibility for the suicide bombing, and it wasn't the only one.
A car bomb got next to the bus just after when it was stopped in a bus stop and exploded. Fortunately for me, I was sitting in the middle of the bus to the right. The car bomb was next to the bus behind it on the left side. I think around 15 people died from the explosion.
Although numbers of suicide attacks by the Palestinian group against Israel dropped sharply since the building of this barrier, it's hard to say it's all because of the concrete wall. Another important reason that cannot be disregarded is that in 2004, Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat died. And Mahmoud Abbas took office. The new leader opposed armed struggle and started to cooperate with Israel on security matters, while Israeli troops began to operate in all parts of the West Bank, meaning attack plans could be smashed up before they were implemented. The West Bank, a landlocked territory bordered by Israel to the west, north, and south, and by the Jordan River to the east. It's been occupied by Israel since the Six-Day War, also known as the Third Arab-Israeli War of 1967.
You see this sign?
Yes.
So from here, from this point, is the Palestinian Authority.
For foreign visitors, traveling into the West Bank is not easy these days because of measures imposed since the Hamas surprise attack on Israel on October 7th. Many checkpoints between Israel and the West Bank have been closed, and security screenings have become a lot stricter. Meet 77-year-old Mariam Absada, a resident of Bethlehem. The city is well known as the birthplace of Jesus Christ, attracting millions of visitors and pilgrims around the world every year during peaceful times. Tourists also come to catch a glimpse of the graffiti on the wall,
a vivid reminder that life here is obscured, repressed, and strangled, and yet people resist by expressing themselves in whatever way they can.
In the beginning, it was just a fence. People started to protest. Then it became the wall.
Mariam had knee surgery recently. She tried her best to apply for permission to cross the wall to Jerusalem for the surgery, but failed. Mariam used to work in Jerusalem as a chef for 15 years. She quit her job after her son Iyad Absada was shot dead by Israeli soldiers in 1988 during the First Intifada.
He was at the church and the soldiers were always there. People started to protest and Iyad went with his friends. Then the soldiers started to shoot at them. They used dum-dum bullets which exploded inside his body.
She hasn't been able to return to Jerusalem since.
I used to see my daughter in Jerusalem, but since they put up the wall, they haven't let me in.
Mariam's son died when he was 20 years old, and for today's youth in the West Bank, the future is still one of the deepest uncertainties. 28-year-old Rakan Ramadan works at a souvenir shop right beside the wall. Half of his family live in Jerusalem, but he cannot go visit them. Palestinians require a travel permit to travel in Israel or even East Jerusalem and within the West Bank. But obtaining a permit is complicated and varies depending on the purpose of travel and the individual's circumstances.
Gas station. This permission, it's a limited. Limited, it means just for a few days, 22 days, and it's from 5 a.m. until 7 p.m. We have to pay 2,500 shekel for each 22 days.
Paying 2,500 shekels or about $650 for a 22-day limited travel permit is something too luxurious for Rakan. Because to earn that amount of money, he has to work for 1.5 months. And right now, he faces job insecurity because there are no tourists. But even if he could afford it, he still couldn't obtain the permit.
Me, I'm not married, I'm a single, but I can't get the permission because they say, or they ask us to marry the girl and then they get a baby or a child to let us get this permission because they are thinking, if we have a family, we cannot do anything wrong inside Jerusalem.
There's also a blacklist that many find themselves placed on.
If I did something wrong before, when I was like teenagers or when I was like something like that, they will not give me, not only me permission, no, all my family permission.
A report published by the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics shows about 30% of employed Palestinians from the West Bank work in Israel and Israeli settlements, mainly in construction, manufacturing, and agriculture. For these people, crossing the wall and entering Israel are closely monitored by Israeli soldiers.
At 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock, I don't remember, in the morning, the army vehicle coming to the gate, open the gate, doing a list of the people crossing, and afternoon, before the sunset, they open the gate. Those that enter must come back. Once you don't come back, it's the end of the permissions that we ever get to work at your olives.
Noam Banzavi is a retired Israeli colonel. Since retirement, he has been working for a charity called Road to Recovery, transporting Palestinians from the West Bank to doctor's appointments and other medical care within Israel. But since Hamas' October the 7th attack, the charity has suspended its operations.
It's the minimum that we can do and promise our security. We try to let them live as normal as we can with those ideas.
When Israel started to build this barrier, it said it was temporary and only for security concerns.
In 2004, the International Court of Justice said the wall violates international law, calling on Israel to dismantle it. But over 2 decades have passed since its construction. The controversial barrier is still here. 85% of the structure is inside the West Bank, carving off nearly 10% of its territory. And it's worth noting the construction of the barrier is not yet finished. The architect of the wall, Israeli Colonel Danny Tirza, said the cost of the structure is over $2.5 million per kilometer, while the UN says Palestinians have paid a heavy cumulative cost of about $50 billion between 2000 and 2020 due to the additional restrictions imposed by Israel.
The situation is bad. Even in the college, there are soldiers. It's not safe here.
As a Palestinian, we don't have any future because we're still under occupied.
Supposing. I agree. But what is the solution? Palestinians and us, we don't like this situation. But at the last 75 years, we didn't find another solution.
The Hamas attack on October the 7th has left Israelis living in shock and pain, but Palestinians in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip have faced greater disasters for decades. Debate over the barrier hasn't stopped, just like the conflict between the two sides shows no sign of ending. Without substantive peace talks, the security fence, or separation wall, is nothing but a symbol of a broken divide. Geographically, physically, and mentally.